Dear Han Buell and Un Buell, welcome to our philosophy lecture today. Today, we will be discussing Anselm's proof of the existence of God, one of the most famous arguments for the existence of God in the history of philosophy. But before we dive into the details, let me first ask you a question. Have you ever heard of the concept of a perfect being? A perfect being is a being that possesses all possible perfections. For example, a perfect being would be all-knowing, all-powerful, and morally perfect. This idea of a perfect being is essential to Anselm's proof of the existence of God. Now, let's move on to Anselm's argument. Anselm's argument is famously known as the ontological argument. The argument can be summarized in the following way. 1. God is defined as a being than which none greater can be conceived. 2. It is greater to exist in reality than merely in the mind. 3. Therefore, God must exist in reality. Let me explain this argument a bit further. Anselm starts with a definition of God as the being than which none greater can be conceived. This means that God is the most perfect being that we can possibly imagine. Anselm argues that if we can conceive of such a being, then it must exist in reality because it is greater to exist in reality than merely in the mind. To help illustrate this argument, let me give you an example. Imagine a perfect island. This island has everything you could possibly imagine: perfect weather, beautiful scenery, abundant resources, and friendly people. Now, let me ask you a question: which is greater, an island that exists only in your imagination or an island that actually exists in reality? Obviously, an island that exists in reality is greater than one that only exists in your imagination. Anselm's argument applies the same reasoning to God. However, Anselm's argument has been widely debated and criticized throughout the history of philosophy. Many philosophers argue that existence is not a predicate, and therefore, we cannot use existence as a property to define things. Moreover, critics argue that Anselm's argument only works if we accept his definition of God, which not everyone does. Next time, we will compare Anselm's argument with Thomas Aquinas' famous 5 ways argument for the existence of God. Always be healthy. De Chilius.